Now to the race for 2020, and while Beto O'Rourke is keeping him guessing about a presidential run, two of his fellow Democrats, Senators Elizabeth Warren and Amy Klobuchar, are leaving no doubt.
This is the fight of our lives, the fight to build an America where dreams are possible, an America that works for everyone. And that is why I stand here today to declare that I am a candidate for President of the United States of America.
I am running for every parent who wants a better world for their kids. I'm running for every student who wants a good education, for every senior who wants affordable prescription drugs. I am running for every American. I am running for you.
Two women, two senators, but two different approaches to what it means to be a Democrat in this 2020 campaign. CNN political director David Chalian is in Houston, where he's getting ready for tomorrow's CNN presidential town hall with former Starbucks CEO and independent Howard Schultz. Schultz has repeatedly slammed the Democrats' lurch to the left. So David, let's talk Senator Klobuchar. You know, she presents herself more as a moderate. She hasn't signed on to Medicare for All. She doesn't back abolishing ICE. And according to Vote Tracker by 538.com, she has voted in line with Trump 31% of the time since she took office. So my question is she a viable option for anyone skittish about backing a third-party candidate?
Well, she's a viable option inside this Democratic nomination race, Brooke. She's the first one, actually, that we're seeing now sort of start paving that path of a potential more centrist lane inside the Democratic Party. We've seen Warren, you were just showing, obviously unabashedly liberal, progressive, but Gillibrand and Harris and Booker and others are sort of filling the left lane at the moment. And we're waiting on some folks. You mentioned Beto O'Rourke or Michael Bloomberg or Joe Biden, who may also join Amy Klobuchar in this more centrist lane. Now, when I say centrist, remember, I'm still talking about the Democratic Party of the left. It's just within the context of the primary fight. You noted Klobuchar is not lined up with some of those other more liberal members.
In staying on Klobuchar, and in the days leading up to her announcement, she was subject to several reports citing anonymous former staffers that say she mistreats her staff. And according to Legistorm, she has the third highest staff turnover in the Senate from fiscal years 2001 all the way up to 2017. And here is how she responded to these reports this morning.
First of all, I love my staff. I wouldn't be where I am, and we wouldn't be able to pass all those bills and do all that work if we didn't have great staff. I am tough. I push people. That is true. But my point is that I have high expectations for myself. I have high expectations for the people that work for me, and I have high expectations for this country.
Do you think she can spin this into a positive moving forward? She's going to keep getting asked.
Well, she's clearly trying. That was spin that you're identifying there, and pushing back on a couple of negative stories that were looking at this staff issue in the week leading up to her announcement. She's clearly having none of it, and yet she's not running away from it. As you noted, she's just trying to embrace some bit of reality of that reputation and turn it into a positive. We'll see. To me, it will largely depend on if we hear any mistreatment of her staff during this campaign that feeds into this larger narrative. But I don't think this is going to be the defining characteristic of her campaign if she avoids those kinds of pitfalls in terms of managing this electorate. But remember, just to go back to what you were saying before, she is somebody who just won 60% of the vote in Minnesota, a state that was razor thin close in 2016. She's making the case that a lot of other Democrats aren't yet, that she could win over some of those Trump voters that slipped away from the Democrats.
Kamala Harris, Warren, and Klobuchar's colleague and 2020 rival, also, they were talking about a range of topics during an interview this morning, including marijuana.
They say you oppose legalizing weed.
That's not true.
I know.
and look, I joke about it, half joking. Half my family's from Jamaica. Are you kidding me?
Have you ever smoked?
I have.
Okay. Like
and I inhale. I did inhale.
Okay.
It was a long time ago, but yes.
Now, all jokes aside, Cory Booker introduced a bill in 2017 that would legalize marijuana use at a federal level, a bill that Senator Harris eventually co-sponsored after Kirsten Gillibrand and Bernie Sanders expressed their own support. And then, of course, 27 years ago, Bill Clinton famously made headlines for saying, you know, he tried it, but he didn't inhale. Do you think now, in the snapshot that is 2019, is this even a blip on the radar?
I mean, the fact that candidates smoke pot is not going to be a blip. We're well beyond that in society. And in fact, this issue of the legalization of marijuana, Brooke, came up in the bar confirmation hearings. You know, both Booker and Harris sit on the Judiciary Committee, and she was making very clear that she believes this needs to be dealt with legislatively to move towards legalization. David
Chalian? Thank you, my friend. Let's remind everyone again, you're in Houston preparing for the CNN Presidential Town Hall with Howard Schultz. Poppy Harlow is the host. That is tomorrow night, 10 o'clock Eastern, only here on CNN. And 1 week from today, Don Lemon will moderate a town hall with Senator Amy Klobuchar in New Hampshire. So that it will also be 10 p.m. Eastern here on CNN. Just into us this afternoon, we are hearing the president will be holding a meeting inside the Oval Office this afternoon on wall funding. As we get closer and closer, government shutdown and talks break down. Remember, that deadline is Friday. And tax return season, so many Americans are getting quite the shock. Refunds way smaller than years past, despite the president promising that his tax cut would help the middle class. President Trump is facing unique opposition in his bid for re-election. He will be challenged by at least 5 women who have announced they are either running for president or exploring a run in 2020. But in a campaign that will be post-Me Too movement, post-Women's March, and after a historic year for women up on Capitol Hill, my next guest argues the rules are different for women in politics this time. She writes in the Washington Post, as the year of the woman gives way to the year of many women, the female candidates are woke to the ways in which they are required to pass a test they shouldn't have to take in the first place. That writer is Margaret Carlson. She's a columnist for the Daily Beast. And Margaret, thank you so much for being on. And just going back to that quote, how are these women so woke, you think?
Well, a lot's happened since Hillary ran, and she was pretty much torn apart. This whole likable business is a free pass to do a personality test on women, but not so much on men. And we've had Me Too, Time's Up, we've had the Women's March. Women have organized, voted. They won 100 seats in the Congress. And I think it's too late to be imposing something on them that their male counterparts aren't asked to answer for.
We saw a real-world example of this with Amy Klobuchar. I was just talking to David Chalian about this, responding to claims that she's a mean boss. And your quote was this: that doesn't mean Klobuchar shouldn't have to answer valid criticism, just that she shouldn't do it with her blueberry muffin recipe. A double standard doesn't vanish in a day. I think I know what you mean by that, but explain it for me.
Well, a couple of the videos I mentioned, Kamala Harris put out her cornbread on Thanksgiving, and Elizabeth Warren did an announcement video in her kitchen. So there's still, this need that's felt to be likable. I can't think of a different word. Mm-hmm. And the mean boss thing, I wanted to listen to David, but I was just coming into the studio, so I didn't hear him. There are mean bosses on the Hill, and a lot of them are male members of Congress. All of them work their staffs like rented mules. That's what it's like on Capitol Hill. But the fact that she's being called on it, on the eve of announcing, strikes me as slightly unfair. And the study that was done a few years back found that she was Klobuchar was at the top of the list. But this list of 10 had 7 women on it. 70% of the list was made up of women when they made up about 20% of the Senate. So I'd just be skeptical about that, and why would a woman be singled out for this? Mm-hmm. But as I said, she should have to, answer for it. I think she did yesterday. I think she was good on that. But there's a lot of putting out your favorite recipe to kind of soften your edges, and I'm hoping she doesn't do that.
Like, we're over that. We don't need to see her blueberry muffin recipe.
Yes, I didn't bring my I didn't bring my chocolate chip cookie recipe today, Brooke.
Well, I don't cook, so my husband does all of that. So that's my offering for you on that.
You lucky
bless him.
girl.
Thank goodness. Now we are used to seeing a lot of women champion one another in politics. So when I'm wondering is like when we pass through this, kumbaya phase of everyone jumping in, and when everyone's elbows get sharpened, and what does that look like when these candidates, go head to head in a debate?
They have a supper club where the women in the Senate get together about once a month at each other's houses or at a restaurant. And this is bipartisan, Democrat and Republican. And I remember Senator Amy Klobuchar telling me that she went and spent a week's vacation with Senator Murkowski in Alaska. So they're all very friendly. It will be on the merits. I don't think it will be personal. You're not going to see any lying Ted Cruz or, crooked so-and-so. It's not going to be personal. And in fact, you will look in vain to find a Democratic senator taking on a Republican senator personally. But you have seen them take them on substance. And they'll have different tax reform plans. They'll have, Senator Elizabeth Warren probably wants to break up the banks in Senator Gillibrand's home state. They'll be discussing all of that. But it will be done on
substance,
on real policy differences.
It'll be refreshing. Margaret Carlson, thank you very much.
Thanks,
Thank you. The embattled governor of Virginia giving a sit-down TV interview as he faces calls to resign over racist pictures inside an old yearbook. But the interview didn't entirely go as planned. We'll show you what happened.